That should be better. That was weird. Decided it didn't want to use my headset, but it should be there now. Get rid of this stuff I don't need. Let me actually put this up because stuff. Cause stuff. Um, so I'm really just playing with streaming stuff. I don't know that anybody's even here other than maybe Paul. Um, so the first thing I did was create a starting timer because I realized in the past streams that I went back and watched some of the older streams, and there's times where I wasn't ready to really start, but I started anyways, and there was a lot of dead air there. Now, granted, a starting timer countdown thingy is still technically dead air, um, but at least you know that something's going to happen soon. And the timer might not even be accurate. I mean, I might cut it short. We'll see. But I just wanted something to kind of say, hey, I need like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 5 minutes before I actually get going. And I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try to kick that off before the stream is scheduled to actually start. So, like, if I plan to start the stream at 8 o'clock, I'll kick that timer thing off, like 7:50 or something, just to kind of give it some lead in time to button things up before I get going. Um, I took some notes. Where did I put those? In a Google document. Um, so, well, here, let me drag this out. You guys don't need to see all that. Google Docs. So I took some notes on some things that I wanted to kind of go over and either add to streams, try to make the streams work better in the long run, and then just personal notes as well. What the hell is this? Somebody shared. What is this? Get started with 3D printing. Oh, it's the I'm doing a it's the words. Words are hard right now. CNC plasma table. I'm going to be building a CNC plasma table. Derek Melton kind of sparked the interest on that, and then he bailed on me. To his credit, he has a very good reason why. I don't know if he's announced that yet, but I'm just gonna I'll let him talk to that, and if he announces it, then I mean, he may have, but I don't know, so I'm not gonna say anything here. Let's just say he has a really good reason to bail on building one. Uh, so he was kind enough to offer up the printed parts that he had for that, and I accepted them because I'm actually you wouldn't be able to hear it. But I'm down 2 printers right now due to my own stupidity. So those won't be back up and running probably until Tuesday, which means I have 1 printer to do 3 projects that I kind of have in progress, and I need to get those done so I can work on some other stuff. Ultimately, it meant that I just right now did not have time to print the parts for the CNC plasma table, so he had them. So I'm going to take them. I'm not a big fan of PLA, uh, especially in the harsh environment of my shop, but I think they'll be good enough to get us going, and then when I have more time, I will reprint them. But if I don't have the time, at least I'll have those parts to work from, and then um, I will go from there. Another thing I might do is I might print these parts twice, and then offer those parts to somebody else that's building that table. As long they just pay shipping, and then I'll offer it up. Just kind of a pay it forward kind of a thing since Derek offered his up. But I have a document. I know I have a document. I started a document. Where the hell? These are the previous 7 days. Did I not save my little document? Did I not? Oh, you know what? Whoops. Something called Google Crap on my. Oh, it's for my phone. It's like I have notes called Google Crap. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I can remove that. Trying to think if I did not. I don't. I don't like using things like Word or Google Docs and spreadsheets. I'm not a huge fan of those things. So I tend to do everything like in text format or markup format, just in a Unix machine or Linux machine, however you depend or however you want to look at that. Anyways, I know what most of those notes were, so I was going to bring this up. I was scrolling through here. I got stuck in the doom scroll mode. This is interesting. This is my daughter-in-law, by the way, and she's got like a channel going on. I don't really watch it. I support it. I go and thumbs up things, but I, I'm an old man. I don't know what the hell she's talking about half the time. So maybe I should watch it and maybe I'd figure some of that out. I don't know, but the my stuff is blah 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 blah. Nope, I don't want to do none of that. I don't want to do any of that stuff. Hey, look, Sharp Bin Forge is live. Um, but so I had gone through. Um, I don't know if they're listed as live still. Yeah, I need to kind of go through and clean this up as well. There's a bunch of junk in here. Well, a lot of it's junk, to be honest. But there's stuff in here, right? That like I'm gonna mute this. I'll let this go while I ramble. Get rid of that. Don't need. I do need that, but I'm gonna move that to a different window. Um, but as I was watching this, like this one in particular, um, one of the first things. Let me actually just rewind. So one of the things. Okay, so we're at 0. We're scrolling. We're scrolling. We're scrolling. We're at 2 minutes, 6 minutes, 9. I mean, I'm talking about something in the background clearly, but I'm not. I'm not forging anything. It's 20 minutes in now. 20 minutes in, I'm forging something. So that's why it was where it was at. It took like 20 minutes before I actually started doing anything, and I was like, man, that was something I noticed and multiple videos. There was a couple where I got right into it, but it wasn't it wasn't very consistent. So that's something I wrote as a note for streams to be a little more consistent, be ready to go, and get to it. Like I get dedicating a little bit of time to interacting with whatever audience there may be, but and this will kind of go into another bullet point I had. Um, I get I get that, but I want to keep that window very concise, as in like once the stream starts, I'll dedicate a certain amount of time to one allowing more people to join, like the extra two people, um, and then kind of discussing what it is I'm going to be doing, and I'd like to present that in a better way as well. The forging part, in my opinion, uh, it's a big part of it. I want to show that, but I think some prep work and understanding what it is you're planning to do is going to be a big one. Yeah, yeah. So as Paul was just saying, um, spending 5 to 10 minutes explaining it, and that's kind of one of the bullet points I kind of made was, kind of be more concise about what you're going to do, and then do that thing, and then I'm going to dedicate once I shift from that and I go into the actual work. I don't intend to do a lot of crowd interaction at that point until a certain. What I'll set up little breaks to do that, because I don't want to like just leave people hanging, right? But at the same time, uh, it shouldn't take an hour to do some of the things that I've watched myself do, and it took an hour to do it. And it's really because what I find myself doing is stopping and talking to people and reading the chat, and it's distracting me from what I had set out to do. And I got a squirrel brain sometimes, and and to be honest, sometimes those things, like I think they're kind. Sometimes I think things are important to share, but I don't necessarily want to do them. So if I'm in that state of mind where I don't necessarily want to do it, it's really easy to pull me off task, because I don't really want to be doing the thing, and I will find other ways to engage my brain, um, so I don't have to do that thing. Um, that's just a character flaw of mine that I've known I've had for a long time. It's like, oh look, you know, there's a shiny thing over there. Let's go see what it does. I've had an item in the back of my truck for like 2 weeks now, because it's the last thing I really want to do. I'm going to take it out of my truck tomorrow, but it's one of those things where it's like I really don't want to mess with that right now. So I come up with excuses for not going out and doing it. Saturday, I came home after being at um, Coal Iron Works' IBA hammer, or not. It was not a hammer. It's just a regular IBA meeting. Uh, but we do a lot of forging and stuff. But I got home and I fully had intended to pull that thing out of the back of the truck, and I had to burn trash too. And neither one of those things were really high on my list of things I wanted to do. So I I sat down in my chair and then passed out for like 2 hours. And then by that time, it was getting too late to do any of that stuff. So I just, yeah. So yeah, you know what? Because I can't find that document. Hang on, I'm going to write it back out. So just so I have it. So I'm going to be a little more concise with, if I could spell concise. There we go. Uh, so be a little bit more concise about what I'm working on. Spending, you know, 5 to 10 minutes. Actually, I'm not going to put spending. Dedicate 5 to 10 minutes to interact. Get to work. So part of the get to work thing, and you will see this on almost any stream I do up to now, hopefully. I, 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 I rarely ever had a plan going into it, So that also meant that tools weren't ready to go when I started working. And then I would spend an enormous amount of time just looking for tools that I thought I needed to do the thing when I needed to do the thing. Not like, oh, I'm going to need this. I better go grab that. No, it was like I'd get to that stage and be like, oh, I need this tool. And then I would spend 15 minutes looking for that tool. So one of the things I want to do going into a stream, knowing the project I want to work on, I want to have those tools ready to rock and roll. Um, that means if they need to be dressed, that they'll have already been dressed, so I'm not having to take it to the grinder and fix it. Now that still might happen if I do something stupid, but ideally everything will be ready to go and lined up, for me to use. That kind of goes into um, another thing um, is having the workspace ready um, and organized. Um, because having the tools bundled up in a pile is definitely better than walking around looking for them. It also means that I'm shuffling through stuff, things will fall. They could get, like I tend to like lay things on my forge and they'll tend to get buried by coal and then I'm digging for them. So that's another thing I want to have. I've got plenty of TV trays to set up and use, so I just want to get better about doing that and having that ready to go. Um, and I one of the things, and like if Paul's still around, Paul knows this all too well. Sometimes I have the wackiest of ideas just pop up, and then this is why. I mean, sometimes those ideas work out really well. I mean, they're not completely wacky. It's just kind of like, well, why didn't you think of that earlier? And usually it's because everything that I tend to come up with, I rarely have a game plan going into it. Like I don't set out to go like, yeah, today, today I'm gonna forge a fire poker. I don't think that way. It just doesn't really occur to me. But that's for a stream. I think that's not a good thing. Maybe once in a while I do something like that, but overall, I think a stream would be better if it was more planned out and organized and executed, because that way you can fit ideally the stuff you want to do within, the time frame of that stream or one other stream, and that kind of goes into another thing. Unless it's a really big project, any of the streams, I want to I want to keep projects to like no more than 3 streams in a row of that project. Ideally, they would be done in that night, um, but sometimes that's just not possible. Even on a regular project, sometimes you can spend 12 hours in the shop and still not have time to get it done that day. Um, I don't intend to do a lot of those types of projects on stream, which kind of goes into another thing. I'm kind of looking to do, yeah, they're definitely not great sometimes. Um, Especially when we're like spitballing wacky ideas and shooting them down and spitballing other ideas on top of those. That could be interesting in a way too, though, is for some people to see that interaction and how that. I think some people don't necessarily do that. I think a lot of people don't. I think I would say a lot of people don't handle that type of situation very well. They want everything regimented and structured in a lot of ways. So when you start throwing things at them like that, it kind of they're kind of like, whoa, what's going on? Um, but I mean that it's like a jam session to me, when like as a musician, you're just throwing stupid ideas, and sometimes those ideas work. Sometimes you're like, what was that? It's like, I don't know, I just a little too much Gatorade. Um, but that kind of goes back to the long form projects. I want to start doing edited videos as well. and I've got like a series of edited video ideas that I want to do that I'm going to start with, and I'm not I can't even pretend to say when I'm going to release edited videos yet. There's no time frame. I'm not setting a time frame on that because I'd like to get, I don't know, let's say 6 edited videos before I start pushing them out. Um, because if I commit to a time frame that I can't meet, then it might not get done, right? Um, but I want to have at least 6 videos in the can, ready to rock and roll. That way, I have time to breathe and think about what to do next. And if I want to go do something, I can, push one out. So I figure, and I'm only looking to do one a week. So I'm thinking 6 will give me a 6 week head time, lead time. Um, so I want to have at least 6 ready to go, and then well, technically 7 because I always want to have 6 in the bag, right? 6 ready to go. That way I can kind of keep pushing them out. That way if I need a little extra time, I've got it and it can get out there. And I've already got probably 12 ideas for edited videos as it is, just to get going. And I kind of hate doing it, but at the same time, I feel like it should be done because I only know of like maybe 1 or 2 channels out there that really have a good, cohesive beginners set of videos and then progressions. And I honestly think um, my forging style is vastly different from theirs. So that leads into some of that a little bit, but I want to incorporate some of that as well. This is not that their stuff isn't, you know, valuable or viable. They both are clearly. I mean, they're both, the two I'm thinking about offhand are Black Bear Forge and Christ Centered Ironworks. It's not that there's anything wrong with their stuff. Roy has some great videos. Um, Black Bear Forge has some too, but their forging style is completely different from mine in a lot of ways. So I'm gonna try to show it the way I would approach it on certain things. That would be right or wrong. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I'll see something and I think to myself, you know, I I wouldn't do it that way. But then I watch them do it and go, okay, I mean that way works clearly, and I haven't tried it. So before I naysay it or say anything bad about it. I try not to say bad things about it, at least in public. But before I say anything one way or the other regarding a process, I should at least attempt it. Um, so some of the videos that I want to do with like, let's just say drawing out, for instance, I don't want to just sit there and bang on the edge of the anvil like I normally do and say, see, voila. I want to show using the horn, and I want to show using the flat of the anvil, and I want to show. I'd also really like to show, and I might regret this decision, but one of the things I might do is drag my 250 pound anvil out and show the difference between using the horn on a much lighter anvil and a much heavier anvil. And to be honest, I still don't think a 250 is that big, um, but it's probably bigger than most people have. Um, so, but if I had a 400 pound anvil, I would instead pull that one out and show that. But because there is a major difference between using the horn on a smaller anvil versus a bigger one, and it's because of the amount of mass on that horn. Um, so it's not that you're going to get differing results, but what you can technically get away with on a horn or on an anvil, on a smaller anvil like that versus a bigger one are going to be much different. I think in a lot of ways that's why a lot of guys tell you to get the biggest anvil you can get. Um, I would argue that that's not the greatest idea in the world. Most of those big anvils are too much anvil for most projects, and you have to come up with workarounds. Not that you can't do it, but you got to come up with workarounds to do some of the stuff that you want to do. Where in a lot of cases, on a smaller anvil, you don't have to come up with those workarounds. Uh, in some cases, yes, you do, but for most general purpose hand forging work, you do not. Um, so there's that. Um, but I want to keep those. The other thing is, I want to try to keep those videos under 30 minutes, without any fluff, just kind of straight to the point, doing the thing and showing the thing. But I also want it to, cover fundamentals that I think a lot of times get skipped. Um, it's just little things, but I think there are things that tend to get kind of glossed over. And sometimes, I mean, the only reason it occurred to me on certain things, this just happened yesterday or Saturday. I'm trying to get better about just saying the day instead of like, oh, yesterday. Well, this could be watched 2 years from now. Just say, Saturday. And um, Saturday we were talking about hammer handles and hammer weights. And one of the guys I was working with was he kept reaching for this light hammer and he was hitting really light. And finally, I'll admit, I got frustrated with him, and I was like, "Here, use this hammer." And I handed him a 3.5 pound hammer, and I was like, "If you need to choke up on the damn thing, but hit it." Um, and then I was explaining, the benefit of a longer handle on a 3.5 pound hammer and using a 3.5 pound hammer is you can choke up on it and just pick it up and drop it. It's just like picking up that little tiny hammer and swinging it fast. The only difference is you pick it up and you're dropping it. You don't have to work that hard. It's going to do the thing because the amount of mass in that hammer versus what he was swinging. And I was like, but if you need to, you can always shift your grip. That handle will slide up. You're at the end of the handle now, and you've got all that extra leverage that you want. And I, on a piece of 3/8 material, I don't think you need all that, but it's there if you want it. I don't use it often, but that's one of those things that I was watching Brian Brazil one time. So Brian, let's just say I know a guy that likes to make fun of Brian because the only time he ever sees him swing a hammer, he's choked up on it way high. So in all those videos, he's swinging a 6 pound hammer, and he's swinging his 6 pound hammer so he can move slower, but still get a decent amount of work done and allow you to see what's happening. That's why he's doing that. So one day I was watching him and he was not swinging his 6 pound hammer, by the way. He was thinking of 3 or 3.5. He was working on something, and then he got to a section of that material that was about, I think it was about 1 inch. And when he went up, that handle slid up his hand, and then he came back down and hit it. And I was like, oh look, he actually adjusted his grip for that. I don't even think he realized he did that. I asked him. He was like, I don't, it never occurred to him that that's what he does, and he just does it. Um, but he said that was, at the time, he said that was something well, I had to keep that in mind going forward. I don't know that he ever has, but it was something I picked up just watching him work, and I was like, oh, he never mentioned it. I was paying attention and caught it and was like, oh, look. And then in doing so, I've watched other Smiths do the same thing in a lot of ways. And it's usually kind of a reverse action because a lot of those guys are swinging slider hammers, so they're, much lighter. So they tend to be on the end of the handle more often, and then they'll slide up for lighter controlled hits. Um, so it's the same but different, right? Like because of the mass equation that's going on there, they've got to swing from the end of the handle more often to get the same amount of whip and kinetic energy out of the smaller hammer that we're getting out of a much bigger hammer that we're choking up on. So when you really look at it, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're just going about it in a different way. So I tend not to be one of those people that tell you how to do something. But if I sit there and watch you baby tap a piece of steel long enough, I'm going to take your tiny ass hammer away from you and give you something bigger. Um, just know. Um, and I do the same thing with a sledge, by the way. If I've got a striker that's very timid and not hitting very hard, I will put the 15-pound sledge in their hands and take away the light hammer. Because all they really got to do is pick it up and drop it and put it in place, and a lot of times that's all that's needed. Um, you know, it's the same but different, right? Like if you're swinging a lighter hammer, you got to swing it faster, or for a little more conviction to get the same amount of power. Otherwise, same but different. But I find handing them a bigger hammer, they move slower, but they're hitting harder, and I think that starts to build confidence. And then, not everybody can swing that thing all day long. I ain't gonna lie. When I first started it, I would get sore up in here, um, but I've gotten used to it, and it doesn't bother me, and that's what I swing the most now, all the time. Um, I don't care if your preference is a 10-pound hammer and you're hitting plenty hard. Sweet. I want when I'm working with a striker, I want accurate, square, in power in that order. Accurate, square, and power. I don't want power, but you're swinging all over the place. You know, I don't want power, but then you're not hitting squarely because a powerful you can swing with all your might if you don't hit that tool properly. It's not putting it's not driving that power into the work. So if you're clipping the edge of the tool, well, one, you're damaging the tool, but two, it's not sending that power completely down into the material the way it should. So it's not the same. And that can be evaluated very easily, um, just by looking at the hits. I mean, there's times where it sounds like I came down with furious thunder, but if you look at the work that got done, I didn't hit it as squarely as I should have, and it's not nearly as like what I've noticed is when I come down square on a piece, it's got a completely different sound. Yeah, it's got boom too, but it just sounds different. Like it's just like that material just soaked up all that energy. It's a different feel, and you can see it in the results. Um, so, but yeah, there's a lot of different things that I want to do. But this stream was actually really meant for me to play with that little countdown timer. And to be honest, I fully expected that thing to fail, and I was pleasantly surprised that it worked. So I really thought there was going to be 20 minutes of me dicking with that thing. There's an aspect to that timer I don't like, so I need to figure that out. But overall, I like it. Hey, I'm going to switch to the opener scene again, and you let me know if I fixed the audio because they used to apparently not have audio. And I'm gonna go get a drink. All right. So, did we have audio that time? I think I fixed it, but I don't know that for certain. So that was really what I intended to set out to do, and then I was going to talk about the stream stuff. Excuse me. So, kind of make sure I'm not missing anything there. And I mean, if you guys have, yeah, yeah. So, so we have audio, so that's good. yeah, the music, that's that is mine, so I don't have to worry about getting a copyright ding. Um, so I don't. Yeah, that's from a band long, long since departed, but it is mine, so I don't have to worry about being infringed upon. Um, but as far as the stream stuff goes, so again, kind of to rehash just a couple of things that I noticed. Being more concise with the projects, having a project, number one, but being more concise, you know, and explaining what I'm going to do and dedicating, 5 to 10 minutes, kind of going over that and interacting with the viewers, which allows viewers to kind of jump in sometimes. Once you get if I just jump right into a stream, there might be nobody or one person, and then by the midstream there's four. Um, so kind of allowing that time, that build up time. But I think that's one thing. And then when I'm working on the project, I'm gonna dedicate an amount of time, like like I might decide, every 30 minutes I'll stop and do a 5 minute crowd interaction and then move on. Or I might decide I want to get to this point in this project before I stop and interact. Well, I'll play that by ear and see how it goes and kind of get a feel for it, because sometimes getting to a certain point I might realize, well, I got to that point way quicker than I thought, but there might be something noteworthy to explain in that step to talk about, or there might not. And if there's not, I just keep going. If there is, I'll stop and do the thing. But whatever that is, um, and any other things would be like, having the workspace ready to go and, laid out and things like that, material set out already ready to go, um, and kind of going from there. And again, if you guys have ideas for the streams, that would be a good thing too. One of the other things, um, I don't know. I don't know a good way to fix this yet. I'm working on it. Coming up with ideas, but like switching the cameras. Um, I haven't come up with a great solution for that problem yet. Um, so I think that's just going to be manual. And what I think I might do, um, I know that with the tool I use, I can do a picture-in-picture type setup. So what I might do is for Anvil Cam is to split the screen and then try to do a picture-in-picture with. I don't know if I can resize that picture yet, but if I can, that's what I'd like to do, and then maybe have two different views of the anvil. So at least in theory, depending on how you're watching, you can kind of still see what's happening. If you're watching on your phone, it's probably going to suck. Um, it's probably going to suck anyways, let's be honest. But it's a stream. It's not real. Look at this thing. But it's a stream, which is why I want to do edited videos. Because even on a stream, you might not be able to catch the important details. And I think with an edited video, we can video from multiple angles and pick the best shots that we think work in the descriptive nature of what we're doing. Something that really shows what's happening. Um, so to kind of go back into the edited videos, right? Like, let's say I decide to do a pair of tongs in an edited video. That is going to be to make. So on a stream, it's whatever I do, right? I might screw something up, and it's like, okay, I need to start over in this stream, or I'll move on and come back to that thing later and fix it. But on an edited video, there won't be any of that. It's going to be, a pair of tongs might actually end up being 3 or 4 pairs of tongs made in the course of making that one edited video, because I want to make sure you get the correct angles, and I want to make sure that everything goes right. And then as we're editing, I want to have stages, kind of like, at a certain point, okay, you don't need to watch me draw out the reins on a pair of tongs, for however long that's going to take me to do it. And what I'll do is, okay, it's like, okay, well, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it this way, but then it's going to cut to those tong reins already being drawn out, and then we'll go from there. It's like, okay, now we've gotten these drawn out, doing this thing. Um, expect that to take, depending on your skill level, that could take anywhere from, 15 to 15 minutes up to an hour for some people, even longer. Um, or whatever. If you got a power hammer, you could do it in a couple of heats probably. If you're really good with your power hammer, you can do it in one heat. It varies. So we're not going to spend time on that. We're just going to spend time on how I go about it at the anvil, and then we're going to cut to here we are now with this, and then in order for me to pull that off, either I need to stop and then work that out, or have a secondary pair at that state that we can go from there. And the benefit of being able to do it in stages like that, provided I don't completely screw it up, I can take various pieces of that and use it as a storyboard later, and put together a little storyboard thing for the shop. That way people can see the different stages of tongs, or the different stages of a scroll, or whatever it may be. A sneak peek. There might not be a lot of scrolling work in edited videos, simply because that's not something I do a lot of. So I don't feel authoritative on any of it anyways, but I still do it. But I would say scrolling is not my strong suit right now. But in my defense, I was never really interested in it until recently. So maybe we can watch it, but there won't be streams. Yes, edited videos probably not for a while. But edited videos, again, kind of like beginner stuff right out of the gate. Basic beginner stuff. Some people will hate it, some people will love it, some people won't give a shit one way or the other. That's fine. I still think it needs to be there because it leads in to the other things I want to show you. I don't want to put a tong making video out there. One, I think telling people to make a pair of tongs as their first project as a beginner blacksmith is a terrible idea. It's a great way to dishearten somebody to the hobby itself. If you don't have any experience doing some of those techniques, you're just gonna, if you can manage to even get a pair of tongs made, they're gonna be shit tongs for the most part. I've seen like 1 out of 100 look like usable tongs, or that they'll last for any amount of time, made by beginners. I mean, usually you look at them and go, damn, if you get 2 forging sessions out of those tongs, I'll be impressed. Um, so the whole point being, I don't necessarily think it's a beginner project to a degree, but I think there are things that you need to understand and know how to do leading up to it. So that's kind of what I want to focus on. So fundamentals, and then going from fundamentals into small projects that I think a beginner can work on. My favorite thing in the whole wide world, S-hooks. As much as I hate S-hooks, they have several key elements in them that I think are worthwhile to spend time learning how to do. I'm not saying you need to become a professional S-hook maker, but I think you get 10 or 20 S-hooks under your belt, right? You start understanding some of those techniques a little bit better. You still might not be executing them well, but you at least start getting an understanding of why they're important. The other thing is a forged leaf, right, with a stem. Whatever you do with the stem doesn't matter, but a forged leaf with a stem. Again, there's multiple fundamental processes in that. Slightly more advanced than doing an S-hook, but not much different. but it's also incorporating a variety of techniques that you would definitely be using when you're forging a pair of tongs. Um, so you've got multiple set downs there. You're doing a taper. You're drawing something out across the anvil. That's your reins. The leaf in. You could technically say that would end up being your jaws at some point. Blah blah blah, so on and so forth. Those things are in there. Um, another uh, techniques, forge welding. I'm not gonna do. I want to say I'm not out of the gate. My first tong video will not be forge welding reins onto it. Um, but I think it's a valid technique to learn. If I were to have a complaint with most of the forge welded reins I have seen, they just take a piece of 3/8 inch bar, forge weld it to the tong end, and then call that a day. To me, that's sure that works, but a pair of tongs with tapered reins will always be superior to a pair of tongs that are straight reined. As a bar. Um, a bar, out of all of them, the one with the bar is more likely to take a bend or take a set when over torqued, whereas a pair of tapered reins will tend to be more springy. Yes, you can bend them too, but they tend to be a little bit more springy. So, as much as I think it's fine to forge weld reins on, I think there's still work to be done there. Just to throw them on there and then call it a day. I don't think it can be done. For like really light work, light holding stuff, yeah, that's fine. But once you exceed like 3/8 inch material, I think you really need to think about drawing your reins out and tapering them, so you get some good strength on them. Uh, just my personal opinion. So you won't see that for a while. I'll do it later on once I. And by the way, that's something I think I've done one time. So it's not something I would typically do. Um, even power hammer or not, I tend to just draw them out by hand. And I think once you learn how to draw out material efficiently, you'll find it's really not that difficult to do. 3/4 inch, you're rarely forging tongs um, by hand with anything outside of 3/4 of an inch. 3/4 of an inch and under, I think, is easily doable by hand. You can do inch and 7/8. Um, it's once you get into the inch territory, it definitely loses some of the luster of excitement. Let me tell you, but it can be done. Once you exceed 1 inch, though, I'm just like, no. At that point, maybe you should, to be honest, just forging any part of the tongs and outside of anything like inch and an eighth, it can be done, but at that point, I would rather either have a striker available to me or just take it to the power hammer. But other projects I want to look at, doing a forge welding like I don't know, in a sculpture type thing, like with like different elements, like a leaf and a flower. That'll probably be something else. Maybe that's a good idea actually. Is I could show doing a tendril, show doing a leaf, show doing a flower, show doing like a mushroom or whatever, um, just different elements, and then do a whole video on taking each of those individual elements, forge welding them together, and making a forge welded bundle or a sculpture that you can then you know put on your porch or whatever, give to a friend or a loved one. And each one of those that you do, you can make them the same, but each one would have its own character to it. The way you bend things and do things with it comes out different every time. And each one of those elements is reinforcing those fundamentals again. And then you could take it a step further and take that sculpture, and instead of just drawing it out, forge welding it, and drawing it out, you could forge weld a collar around it. So then now we're talking about doing collars, and that'll be another thing is doing stuff like that. But I also want to start showing more power hammer stuff, and I want to start showing more striking stuff when I can. Those Anything with a striker is going to take a lot more effort, simply because I got to line up somebody to be here to do that with, Paul. But and it shows some of those tools to make tools. So like one of the when you go to make when you're starting to make tools, right? There's two tools that you absolutely have to have right out of the gate. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got to be able to punch the hammer eye, and you got to be able to drift that hammer eye. Without those two things, you're screwed. You can buy them, but I think it's imperative that you learn to make them because, again, not only are those two things absolutely and positively necessary to do any of the other tools, they're the most abused tools in your kit. Those two tools take the most abuse, and knowing how to make them will serve you well, so that when those tools have to be retired, it'll be easy peasy. He said fun. Chainmail and fun. Thomas, I admire and appreciate everything you're doing with that chainmail. No, thank you. Absolutely not. Nothing about that looks fun to me. Um, I had a friend that was into like Renaissance fairs and stuff, and he had made a chainmail shirt, and it took him like 6 months of bending these little bitty rings back together, and I was like, wow. Um, he loved it, but I tried to help, because I thought, well, I'll help him. Yeah, I think I got like one row. Like, yeah. I was like, dude, I can't do this anymore. I I can't do it. But yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, yeah. I mean, could you imagine making my fat ass a chainmail shirt or a skirt? Whew, man, that's probably 2 years worth of work. Oh, but yeah, the tools to make tools, right? And I've kind of, it's brutal because really a hammer eye punch is not, and this kind of goes back into something. This was a discussion I had with Brian. I think a lot of us have had this talk. When you do a tools to make tools curriculum, which tools do you make first? Like, because how do you show somebody how to make a hammer eye punch if you don't have a hammer eye punch? Well, you can turn a drift into a hammer eye punch that you'd use by hand. It sucks, but it can be done. you know, um, and then once you get from there, what tools do you make from there? Well, one of the easiest top tools to make is a set hammer. I mean, if you've got a piece of square bar, you're basically all you got to do is put a hole in the damn thing, and you're set. It's a little more complicated than that, but ultimately, that's all you really need to do. You've got a set hammer. But then you'll need to move into um, fullers and bottom tools, um, and those are other things as well, right? But there's a lot of smaller tools that you need to make a hammer, for instance. Yeah, no, I don't doubt that one bit. Actually, it's funny. I I know a guy. I think I want to say his chainmail shirt. He's bigger than me. Weighs. I want to say it was right around 5 pounds total. And it wasn't just like a shirt. It was. I guess it would be like, I don't know, the kind of like a skirt type thing. It was like a shirt, but it kind of went down like mid thigh. And it was long sleeved. And I want to say it was right around 5 pounds. I think is what he told me. Um, and it cost. was like $1,200 for that thing or something like that. It was crazy, and he was trying to save money to start buying different pieces of plate to go with it, and he had budgeted something like, well, he didn't budget yet. He was working on trying to. I haven't lost contact with that dude, but he was talking like, and this was, mind you, 15, 20 years ago. He was talking about um, saving up to get like a full plate set, and it was going to cost him like 20 grand. I think he had budgeted. He was planning to budget 20,000 for it. I It was steel of some sort. I don't remember. He wanted quote unquote combat ready armor because he was doing some kind of like thing. I He eventually his goal was to do. He wanted to joust because that was at the time. I don't know if it's still a thing, but at the time there was like a big resurgence in real jousting. Like they do real jousting matches. Um, and he really wanted to do that. And I used to make fun of him because I was like, I think you've watched that Knight's Tale too many times, bro. Um, it's, nothing about two horses charging at each other and poking each other with sticks is definitely not something I want to do. 2,000 rings for 13 bucks. It would take a lot to make sure. Huh. Yeah, I can't say. And my guess is getting 2,000 rings today is probably far easier than it was, say, 15, 20 years ago. There wasn't like a, well, Amazon was a thing, but it wasn't that kind of a thing. And then like AliExpress and what's the other ones? Those weren't a thing back then. So yeah, I don't know. Um, but it is my understanding that it was all like, I want to say real, but as real as you could really realistically afford to get. It's one of my biggest pet peeves, I guess, while watching quote unquote fantasy or um, medieval historical type movies or whatever nowadays. Like when I watch them now, I'm just like, oh, I can't. There's one movie I remember watching. Oh, so the reason being is okay. One, um, historically, it's been, I don't want to say proven, but for the most part, you're not swinging a sword at somebody wearing chainmail and cutting through them. You're just not. So you're not. I don't care how sharp your sword is. You're not slicing through the human body if it's protected with chainmail. And P.S. It was rare that they ever wore just chainmail. There was usually a gambersall underneath of that was really heavily thick. It was like a thick shirt essentially. So not only would you have to cut through that, you'd have to cut through the chain and then get to the actual body. So you're not really, now if you whack somebody in the arm with your sword, you stand a good chance of breaking their arm still, but you're not cutting it off. So one of those things is like, and if they're wearing plate armor, you essentially stand no chance. Um, at least with a sword. The only way with a sword you're really going to stand much chance is if you can somehow quickly in do it well. Again, you got to get through the chain. You got to be able to find the holes in the armor to be able to pull that off. And there weren't a lot of those depending on the era that you're looking at. So your best option was to hopefully get that guy on the ground and be able to get a dagger into his helmet. Um, you know that I mean that's just the way it was. So the only movie I can recall ever watching where they depicted that very well, I think it was called Ironclad. Um, I can't remember, but there's a scene in it where the dude goes in and he suits up and puts his plate on and comes out and just annihilates everybody. I mean, it's like it is all it's awesome because like once he comes out with that armor on, it's just like you could see the fear in everybody's eyes too at that point. It was just like holy shit, the tank just showed up, and it's true. I mean, at that point, I mean your only hope if you're not also well armored, your only hope is to gang up on somebody like that and get them on the ground so that you can start dismantling them. You're not taking that guy one on one with your sword. It's just not happening. Um, and the other thing is, yeah, it's not great at stabbing. And if you look at the context of the time frame when chain was really prominent, most swords didn't have a point for the most part that could even then penetrate the rings. You'd have to hope that your thrust was strong enough to split the rings as they went in. And a lot of swords really still didn't even have a point that was good at that because it's not what they were really intended for. But the thing also people got to remember is most folks couldn't even afford chainmail. It took you got to think if you were to put it in today's class, middle class people could probably afford chainmail. The poor could not. There's no way they could afford chainmail. Um, and it's the same as like today's millionaires could afford plate armor, where us like middle class people, there's no way. It's that's just not going to happen. And if we could, it's going to be old crusty crap that probably wasn't fitted to us. Um, so we're not going to be nearly as nimble in it as something that's fitted properly. Um, there's a good YouTube channel. Um, I, I feel like it's called Modern History. Yeah, this dude, Modern History TV. This dude, he's got great videos um, about all kinds of different stuff, from that time period. It's really cool. He goes into a lot of different. There's a lot of things he doesn't know, and he'll go get it and try it and be like, all this time I assumed blah, and now that I've done it, it's amazing what you can and can't do wearing this armor. There were certain things that he didn't think you could do in that armor, and turned out you could. And then he realized, well, you could do all those things, but you can't see where this shit when this helmet's on. But nobody ran around without their helmet on. That was crazy. That's a great way to get killed. In fact, I believe there's a story of a king who was killed in combat or on a battleground simply because he made the mistake of removing his helmet because I think he thought the battle had been won. So he took his helmet off and they nailed him. But yeah, it's a great little series. Where's the fusion at? Where's my? Oh yeah, okay, cool. Um, right on. I'll 3D print it. I don't know how long it'll take, but I know I can do other things. Again, some people they can do that. I don't have the attention span for something like that. I mean, it's just I did factory work once for like a few weeks, and I had I had no recourse but to quit because I just couldn't handle it. It was just way outside of my brain range of being able to just shut things down and do the thing. I couldn't. uh, Yeah, I was a terrible factory worker. There's some people that are perfectly suited for that, and then there's others that are not. Just like there are some people that work really well with a bullet point list. You do this, and this. And there's some people that are amazing at that. I am not one of those people. I will go through that thing and be like, hey, this is dumb. Why are you doing it like this? And then I'll start dissecting it, and off the trail I go. But yeah, it's definitely not a thing for me. But hey, I mean, I look forward to watching your progress with it. The back to the edited videos real quick too. One of the things I want to do, and I'd really like to try to get Ed to be a part of it. Steel plates. I don't know. I think in Dungeons and Dragons it's called banded armor. I think, but I don't know what the official real life term would be for that. I don't know. It's very similar to um, I think in a lot of ways it's very similar to samurai armor, except samurai armor's little plates of iron um, interlinked together and then covered in silk. Um, but I think it's very similar. I think samurai armor is more would be closer to what, at least in D&D, would be considered scale armor because it's overlapping plates for the most part. I forget what they call it in the Japanese words for it, but it's also very interesting stuff, and it's a lot different than like full plate medieval armor. Some of that medieval armor is crazy too. Like if you look at the German stuff, that like they, um, God, what was that guy? Um, Maximus, I think was his name or something like that. Um, the emperor, the Roman emperor, I think he's what he was. I don't know, but anyways, that dude had like some German-made armor. Like, and when you looked at the hands, it had like had fingernails and stuff. And as far as details and stuff went, it was crazy and fully articulated, and like it's amazing some of that stuff. That's so when I hear about people talking about like the height of blacksmithing being pioneer village crap, it's like get out of here, man. You, it's not even close, not even remotely close. You know, get out of here. Craziness, craziness. But yeah, back to the edited videos. I was saying I'd like to get Ed Brazil out here at some point and do a video, a very word this carefully, do a very good and concise video on making hammer eye tongs because there really isn't one as far as I've seen. Um, I've seen videos of people making them. I've seen videos of Ed making them with people, but they don't really go into any detail. They just kind of make them, and it's like, well, that I don't know how that's helping anybody. I'm sure it's helped some people, but there's a lot of things going on in a pair of properly forged Brian Brazil style hammer eye tongs. Now, you can make hammer eye tongs in a similar style that will work, but they're not right. Um, and I've seen a lot of those. But I've never seen a good video on making Brian Brazil style hammer eye tongs. And there's a huge difference. People don't realize it until they've actually used them, but there's a huge difference in those tongs. Um, and they're very particular. You can't just make a shape and expect it to do the thing. Let's see if there is a Brian Brazil hammer eye tongs. So I already know that this video is wrong. Woo, excuse me. I need to quit these smokes. But I think also he does an okay job. Let's take a look, shall we? He's okay. Well, he's already starting off wrong. You don't want to use square bar. Not that you can't, but I'll tell you right now, using a square bar, you're making it way more difficult than it needs to be. Um, unless you're using a power hammer or a press, I guess. um, Yeah, if you were to be doing this by hand, eh, yeah, I don't know, man. All right, so he's apparently drawing it out. Now he's doing some stuff by hand. I don't know what this poor hammer is using. Whoa, 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 what's going on here? I could be wrong. That looks like the round side of his hammer, and it looks like he's using the flat side for what he is doing. So that's no bueno. He's also just beating it on the flats. Again, no bueno. Um, but yeah, square bar. You don't want to hammer eye tongs. If you're gonna make, honestly, for my opinion, if you're gonna make tongs, use round bar. But hey, whatever. But hammer eye tongs specifically, you don't want to use square bar if you can help it. It's a lot more work than it needs to be. We're really for most 5/8 inch round um, sucker rod 4140 5160. You want to use a medium carbon to a higher carbon tool steel for these types of tongs because they should be relatively thin and light. Um, and they making them out of mild steel, they won't hold up long enough because they will be in contact with heat for a long time, and we'll see them start to deform. Um, so you don't. It's not that you can't do it. It's just they won't be as good. They won't be as light or as springy. Um, yeah, this I can already tell you he is. These are not going to be very good tongs. Um, and again, I mean, it's not like he doesn't. I don't know who this guy is really. I've seen like one or two of his videos, but what he's doing right now, that's another great example of what you really shouldn't be doing. And that hole didn't look like it was centered at all. But you could, whoa, whoa! You can see his punch looks like it's already mushroomed up. You know why it mushroomed up? Because he put it in a hole and just started wailing on it. Um, yeah. Okay. I'm not really. Oh yeah. Okay. So here's another major issue, and I see this a lot in hammer eye tongs. Um, the rivet placement, and I get it. Normally, you would want this. This is where you would want your rivet placement for most tongs in general, because that's where it's going to provide the most strength and leverage, gripping strength. Hammer eye tongs are not about grip strength. They actually don't hold great, but the trade-off is they're nimble and allow you to move the billet around quickly. Um, you don't want. I mean, you can use pickup tongs to make a hammer, but God, does it suck. The other, let's see how he keeps going with this. I mean, just the fact that they're square is kind of off-putting a little bit. So the other thing, I can't quite tell, but it almost looks like he went for a 90 right here. Let me see if I can catch it. It's not quite 90, but it's pretty damned close. This is not a 90-degree angle on a properly forged pair of hammer eye tongs. This would be your 90. This comes off at an angle. He might have a little bit, but it's not much. Um, so when you're doing that, you want to think about like an equilateral triangle, essentially. So, and then when it opens at its full opening, those jaws will be pretty much parallel. He's at least putting the curly Q on the end, which is good. That's an very important feature, but that's not a very good curly Q. It's very small and flat. Um, and those curly Qs serve a function. They act as end stops when you have the tongs in the hammer eye. So that way, when you go to butt it up against the bottom tool, it acts as a stop. It prevents you from going further. Why is he using rebar now? What is he doing? Is he going to make his rivet out of rebar? Oh my goodness. Okay. I would definitely suggest you don't use rebar for your rivets. That's not a good idea. Um, but hey, okay. Um, yeah. Look how thick these rains are. So it tells me that he was probably using mild steel. You shouldn't. Okay, so here's another thing, right? You shouldn't have to beat your rivet into the hole like that. If it catches on anything on the way through, it's going to start upsetting. It's going to get harder to knock through, and you're never going to get it through, which looks like that's the problem he's having right now. Okay, he got it through. Yeah, oh. I also, the gas fort, oh, look at that. Look how tiny that is. That is not enough for, oh my goodness. I don't mean to sit here and pick this guy's stuff apart. But again, there's really no good there's really no good videos. Oh, right on. I don't got rated by somebody on Twitch. That's that's cool. Right on. Um Welcome to the stream that I forgot it was streaming to Twitch, to be honest. This is kind of like just me rambling. Um so I'm kind of explaining that there's not very many good videos on forging hammer eye tongs, Brian Brazil style hammer eye tongs. So, watching this one, there's a lot of things going on here that I would not suggest you do. I know of this person, Gary Houston. I know that he is a competent blacksmith. Um, but I am fairly certain I can already tell you these are not going to be they're shaped very similar to Brian Brazil tongs, but he's already made the same mistakes. He started with square bar. It's making it harder than it needs to be. It looks like he's got a better angle here, and his nubs on the end are better. It actually looks like he did a penny scroll on the end of there, which I think that would work fine. It's just more work than you need to do. But his rivet placement is also wrong. So when I say the rivet placement, right, you're going to get a lot of strength here. These tongs are not about holding strength. Right on, man. Well, thanks a lot. We'll catch you on the next one. Um, so the rivet placement, right? Well, one, it's not centered. It doesn't look like, but I make that mistake all the time too. But the problem is where it's placed. You get a lot of strength up here, but these tongs are about being nimble, not super strong. This actually should drop back probably to about here is where those reins, and that allows the jaws to open more quickly without the handles coming way out. So what he's going to find is if he doesn't size these tongs to a specific dimension, once they exceed that dimension, the tong reins are going to be so spread out that they're going to be unusable. Um, so closed, if he has these closed and then he goes to open them, in order to pick anything up, they're going to have to be opened up quite a bit. What is he making now? Those look like a completely different pair of tongs. But you see this mistake right here, this is probably one of the biggest mistakes people make on these style of tongs, seconded by the geometry on the jaws. And you want those to be as perfectly matched as possible. And the reason being is if you're using them for stops, right? If you're using them for stops on your hammer, when you go to flip this, if this one's longer and you go to flip this, guess what? It's pushing that fuller away from your original mark. So they need to be the same. Otherwise, when you're using that for a stop, it's not accurate, it's not correct, and your fuller marks will be offset. Um, is something, again, I don't know that necessarily a lot of people have ever talked about, but they need to be same to coincide with that. Your hammer eye, the hole in your eye, those need to be about the same size too, because if one is smaller than the other, it's going to offset those nubs when you have them in there when you go to do that. So you want to also drift the eyes to about the same size when you're using them in that fashion. Otherwise, they're not very accurate. Not that you can't use it that way, but they're not very accurate, and you have to be very mindful of that. Um, I would really like to see him using these because I think you see how the reins are closed now, and see where he's at. To pick up a 2-inch billet with these pair of tongs, these reins are going to be look how far apart they are already. Yeah, those reins are going to see. So for stock this size, they're fine, and if you use them in that manner, they're probably fine. But the point of good hammer eye tongs is you can manipulate the billet outside of the eye as well. And a big reason why Brian developed those in that way, yeah, those are. I want to see if I can catch that. I want to go back a little bit. He's going to put it down. He's going to open them. That's a bit bigger than 2 inches, but look how far those reins out. So at 2 inches, that would be. So those reins would still be way out here. It's way too far. So this rivet really should be set back about here to be usable for everything. These would be fine for just holding in the hammer eye, but at that point, I mean, you could make better tongs for that if you're going to make specialty tongs to just hold a hammer by the eyes. There's better tongs for that, and at that point, yeah, put the rivet up close so that it's got a lot of holding force. That's not what Brian Brazil style hammer eye tongs are intended for, though. And this bend is not right. This should be a quote unquote drawn corner. Same with this. This should be a drawn corner. And let's go back. I don't know if there were any more of these videos. Whoop. So Ethan talks about them, but I don't necessarily think he ever did a video showing how to forge them. These are right now. These are probably some of the better ones I've seen, just by from a visual standpoint. Let's click on it and take a look. It looks like he started with round. I'm not sure why he flattened the whole thing like he did, but it's still better than square. That is a ginormous hole, though. So I think he's at least followed some Brian stuff, because looking at his punch was very Brian Brazil style. But I get the impression he's probably never been around Brian, so he doesn't know those techniques as well. But he's clearly utilizing some of the ideas. Oh, I know who this guy is now. I met him at Quad State last year, or back in October or September. It looks like one of my hole punches sometimes. Ugh, not great. So he does some good. This guy does really nice stuff but it's clear to me that at least in terms of forging these tongs, he doesn't fully understand the what's and the whys. And again, it's one of those things that not a lot of people fully understand. This is one of the great. This is beautiful. This right here is beautiful. This is showing one of the greatest strong suits of an induction forge. So what he's doing, right? So if you look up here, He punched this hole just slightly off center. So there's more mass on this side than this side. So how you correct that, how you kind of do, but you kind of don't. Um, the correction for that is you would heat this up and then cool this side off typically, and then drift it, and this will push out more to look more even with this. With an induction forge, you can just heat up this one side and do the thing. You don't have to cool it down or as much. But you typically, if you do it right, you don't even have to cool this side down. You just heat this part up and then do what you got to do. So from that standpoint, this part is pretty awesome. This is showing the power of an induction forge right here. This is one of the greatest advantages, being able to heat up material in a very specific spot. Look at that. So he's going to redrift that. It's going to push out more on the hot side versus the other side. I don't know what he's doing now. Oh, he's bending it. So this is technically correct. You want a really sharp bend here for the most part. But not. So he's drawn out the corner, it looks like. So he's got the ideas down. They're just not 100% right. So far, of the three that I've seen, this one's the best. It looks like he's got the rivet placed a little further back. It probably could still have gone a little further back than where it's at, but this is going to be better. But see that giant hole he put in there? See how thin these corners got? His punch should be really a lot thinner than what he was using. I mean, it should have really just created a small slot that he opened up. That rivet, that boss, look how thin it is right there and right there. That could be problematic depending on it could be very problematic. The longevity of these tongs, I would doubt. But he's doing a fairly decent job. Probably, based off of pictures and what he's seen. I don't know that. I don't know. I don't know this guy, so I don't. I mean, I know him. I've met him once, but I don't know oh, what's going on here? That looked like there was a lot of space between those tongs. Right there, you can see that rivet right there. So there's problems, but so far the best. When you're assembling your tongs, when you put your rivet in, you don't want an air gap there. That should not be there. That is no bueno. That can cause you a lot of issues going forward. Let's see how he deals with it. Might not be a problem for him. We'll see. Well, it looks like he kind of got him closed up. So if you don't get them flat to each other and riveted properly, you only want the movement here, right? You don't want this. You don't want them flopping around, which you could have. But I mean, overall, I mean, so far these probably the best ones I've seen. Did I watch? That was that guy. This one again. Oh, what in the world? He's using flat bar. What? He's using some big flat bar. Wow. I would. Whew. This is a modification of Brian Brazil's design that mainly concerns the boss plates and the reins, which were both offset. Says he. Hey, but look at this. He's using the edge of the anvil. Good job. Kudos to him. It kind of looks like he's using the flat. I can't catch it. It might be the round face. That's funny though. I see a lot of quote unquote Brian Brazil esque people forging, and they got the right idea that they're using the flat. That looks like he's definitely using the flat there, which is fine. In some cases, depending on what you're trying to do. And he seems to be going a lot lighter, so he's probably just sneaking up on what he's looking for at this point. Um, so using the flat at that point, I would say is acceptable. Anytime you're really trying to move material, though, the round face of your hammer is going to be far more efficient than the flat side of your hammer. Right now he's definitely using the flats, but I think he's creeping up on it. I'm really more curious to see. I will say the material he is using, he is definitely he has definitely created a lot of extra work for himself. But depending on what it is he's trying to do, this modification he talks about, um, maybe he needed that extra material to pull that off. So I'm curious to see this. Oh, look at him breaking those edges down. So he's either been around Brian, or he at least has been around somebody with that has been around Brian, or he has paid a lot of attention to the videos because he's doing a lot of things, quote unquote, right. I don't know who this person, Wallman Blacksmithing. I don't know who that is. I like the little shop though, all medieval looking. But man, these are beefy so far looking. I mean, what you're seeing in the camera can be a little deceiving at times, but those look beefy. And if my guess is he's using mild steel, and for those tongs to be able to hold up and withstand what they need to do, they would have to be beefy. Okay, so he's dropping that piece down. I didn't see him mark any of this. So, I mean, he might have marks on there. I don't know. Is he forging in a mask? Hang on. Okay. Okay. Okay, I wasn't imagining that. I was like, whoa, wait, what? Uh, okay, it looks like he's trying to do a drawn corner. So, super duper. I'm not. I didn't see. Granted, I fast forwarded a lot, so he might have marked this stuff out. But again, square cross sections here. I wouldn't do that. But he definitely slot punched this, and now he's opening that hole up. That would be the correct way to go about that. Um, hey, look, he's even got a proper bolster block for his rivet. You can get that going. So he's using his hammer as a measuring device. It looks like do his offset where he wants his offset. So I will say this much: this person can forge, most certainly. Um, you know what? I'm curious to see what else he's got going on. Um, this person can clearly forge. I mean, he's doing stuff that you just don't see most people doing. Um, but man, that these tongs are going to be okay. Again with the rivet placement, it's better than some. It could be better. It still could be back further. Um, but so far, I mean, it's not terrible looking. Um, he's got his nubs on there are a little blocky to me. but at least it looks like they mostly line up. Those look kind of okay to me. I mean, that's an interesting concept that, hey, that's an interesting concept the way he did the offsets there. I wanna try to freeze that. Boom. Yeah, I don't hate this. Um, who did that? Jim Poor made a pair of pickup tongs. He did not call them hammer eye tongs. He called them pickup tongs. The person who bought them called them hammer eye tongs, but Jim called them pickup tongs, and he had put the I don't know what they're called, the farrier shoulders on them, and I didn't hate that. I thought they looked kind of good. Um, the function of them being hammer eye tongs, I would again, it was mostly the rivet placement and the nubs up here being at the same height or whatever matching. Those were the two major issues that I saw. Like they weren't. So like this is close. It looks pretty close. Um, but if you follow the line, is it meeting up? It looks pretty good. I mean, so okay, so far these aren't terrible. I would rate this one over the other one, and then the other two I barely give those a score. So these aren't bad. He's got a Brian Brazil style striking anvil. His base plate's a little anemic. His legs are a little anemic. But hey, if it gets the job done for him in his shop, great. I would recommend this be at least 3/4 of an inch, and the legs being at least 2.5 inch. Those only look like 2 inch to me. Maybe inch and a half. Um, but yeah, they look a little. This whole thing looks anemic. This looks fine. And the tongs, I mean, this offset, that could be handy. I don't know. Um, the rivet placement doesn't look bad. I mean, overall, I'd say those are fine. Um, it's Brian talking about the ultimate tongs. There's another video I've seen of somebody making hammer eye tongs somewhere. Okay, I'm not even gonna click on that one because I could just tell by looking at the picture. Those are no bueno. Yeah. Well, let's see what DF in the Forge has to say about it. Now, this guy can forge too, and again with the square bar. Um, I'd say he can forge and he has a lot of knowledge, but at the same time he does a lot of things that I think he makes it more difficult than it needs to be because I think he thinks that's the only way to do it. I don't know, but I mean I've seen him do some stuff and thought, man, okay, he can clearly forge, but then he does some things and I'm just like, what is going on here? Why would he do it that way? Okay, I'm gonna zip a little forward here. I will admit I have honestly never thought to use a pair of calipers to measure my rivet. I just put it in the hole until it fits in the hole. Um, yeah, no. Like I've mentioned before, this rivet placement's no bueno. That's if he's trying to forge Brian Brazil style hammer eye tongs, which I don't know that that's what he's doing. So again, you should not have, especially cold, you should not have to hammer your rivet in that hard. I mean, you don't want to just fall out, but I mean, damn. See, these to me at this point, if you ever see the Mastermere find, there is a pair of tongs in there very similar to this in the Mastermere find. That's what these look like to me, and they're. I mean, I suppose you could use them for hammer tongs. I mean, if you sized them right, you could clearly. I like his anvil. Okay, I see what he's doing now. So these are hammer eye tongs only. Like these are made to hold the hammer billet in the eye, and that's why they're like this. So this is probably fine. He's not going for the Brian style. Um, I have a pair not too dissimilar from this. I mean, they look completely different, but the same concept here where they fit inside the eye. Um, and they're useful for some things, but when you're making when you're making a hammer with a striker, they're not um, they're not very useful. These are not. Those are no bueno. That's an interesting pair of tongs. I'm not even going to click on that. It's some kind of novelty stuff going on there. Oh, here's one of those forging the ultimate tongs by hand. Oh, okay. I fear I can't not click on this though. So here's another pair of tongs that people think they understand and don't. Brian's quote unquote ultimate tongs. He never says that they hold anything perfect. So he's got a picture. That's Brian's picture right there. So he's trying to model it after some pictures he saw on Facebook. This is Brian's right here. I can just tell by the forging it's Brian's. There was actually some wording on that. Does he ever? Okay, yeah, he does. So I can tell you right now, Brian does not use flat stock for those tongs. I don't know that Brian's used flat stock for any tongs to be honest. But definitely not for the ultimate tongs. Um, I think generally he uses one side is 1 inch and the other is 3/4, I believe, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, I don't know who HOJ Forge is. This was 2021. I mean, this doesn't look bad, but you can kind of see the twist there. That twist. Oh, right on. Um, yeah, you can see the twist in there, and I don't know. I will go back to the Ultimate Tong though. Brian never claims that they hold everything amazing. What he does claim is it will hold a lot of different sizes and shapes. That's why he kind of called them the Ultimate Tongs because they can hold a lot of different things. Doesn't hold them great. Um, I can tell you right now, there's no such thing as a pair of tongs, one pair of tongs that will hold all the things well. What's nice about Ultimate Tongs is when you don't have the right size tongs with you, they will get the job done in a lot of cases. That's what makes them really handy. They hold a taper pretty okay, not great. The ones with the pivoting jaw, those tend to hold tapers the best. Um, yeah, dude, that's not even close. Um, that's not even close, bro. You can see, look at that, how thin it is right there. Um, yeah, no. So I almost guarantee he's going to put the rivet in the wrong place. And again, a lot of this is really not. I don't mean to bash anybody. The biggest thing is a lot of these people don't have the information. There's not information on this kind of stuff, right? It's not something that's openly. It's not that it's not openly available. It's available. It's just nobody's ever really taken the time to do the videos for these kinds of things. Um, there's a lot that goes into using, or I'm not using, forging hammer eye tongs and forging ultimate tongs. I've never even made a pair of ultimate tongs, so but I've watched Brian do it, and I know how long it took him to do it. So, you know, there's that. Uh, those are again. I think this is using mild steel, which is part of their problem. What in the world is it going here? Oh, okay. So yeah, look. Hmm, I'd be curious to hear what he has to say about this. I might have to go back and watch this one later. So one of my favorite things about Ultimate Tongs is a blacksmith in the UK. I don't get rid of that person and they're cheap viewers. People really buy viewers. That's really weird. Um, I feel like I've seen this dude somewhere before. Anyways, um, the Ultimate Tongs, Daniel Leah makes some. I'm whoa, Daniel, what is that? Oof, yeah, those are wrong too. So again, there's just not a lot of information. So I don't really mean to bash anybody. Some of these guys are just they're doing the best they can with the information they have. In a lot of cases, that information is just simply, uh, a potato quality photo that Brian took. Sometimes, if you know what you're looking for, those photos can be really useful. But if you don't know what's going on and you just have those photos to work from, uh, sometimes they can be a detriment, to be honest. I think the other thing is there's a lot of cases where these guys haven't used the actual versions. Going back to what I was talking about, a blacksmith in the UK forged a pair of ultimate tongs and then proceeded to poo poo on them, and talking about, this, that, or the other, or why he didn't think they were ultimate. One, he took Brian's words way out of context. Again, Brian never says that they hold everything great. So he took that way out of context. But then he was poo pooing a lot of other things that he was critiquing, but ultimately he was critiquing his own forging of those tongs that he has never held in his hands. Now that may be different now, but at the time he had never physically held a pair of those real ultimate tongs made by Brian in his hands. So it's like I don't understand how you can critique something like that if you don't have the actual version. Kind of going back into what I was talking about before I get too far, I think a lot of these guys that are trying to make these have probably never really held real Brian Brazil hammer eye tongs in their hands. There's there's people that have made copies that are either, as we've seen in several videos, either not very good copies or pretty decent. But even then, you're getting an interpretation of one person's creation. You're getting the cover version of that, and then you're trying to make you're doing your cover of the cover essentially. So it's I don't mean to completely poo-poo on somebody in that regard because they just don't have all the information. Um, there are some guys that I know that can make hammer eye tongs, and they make them really well. There's you know um, Mark Lane can do it that I know of. I think Palmer Robbins can make them. Lyle Wynn can make them. Um, Andrew Larson can make them. And then I think out of those guys, um, Jonathan Pinkston can make them. And I think Jonathan's probably got it down to an art form. Like I think at this point, I hate to, I don't know. I feel like I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I almost feel like Jonathan's are probably better than Brian's at this point because Brian just makes them right. Like he just does the thing. Um, Jonathan took that to the next level and meticulously broke it down. Um, so, like, if you're looking to get a pair of hammer eye tongs, good ones, Jonathan Pinkston's probably the person you want to talk to, um, or Ed Brazil. Um, Ed's more form over, or function over form. Then Ed's work great, but Jonathan's are beautiful. So, it's kind of what you need and what you can get and how quickly you can get them, I suppose. Um, those were no bueno. These are definitely no bueno. Um, I can tell you that just looking at that, that's yeah no. Again, there's just not a lot of that. So I'd love to get Ed. Hell, I'd love to get Jonathan or even Brian. I leave Brian out of a lot of these. Like I'd love to have so and so do it. I leave Brian out of it a lot because I already know um, Brian. It's hard to get him to do that, and then he doesn't want to spend. He doesn't understand that we can't just make a pair thing and then get it right. Like it's going to take multiple takes, multiple versions to do that. Um, and Brian loses interest in that real quick. So it's really kind of hard to get him to do something like that. Um, the best way to get Brian to do that would be to get him to make a pair and then secretly video him in the process, which I don't know how you would do. I just closed the window I didn't mean to close. That was awesome. I don't know I know who Uncle Buck is. I've met him um, several times, but I can already tell you that there were. I mean, these tongs look. My guess is just looking at this already, his rivet placement's wrong. Um, and it looks like he CNC cut those out to get. Yeah, look at that rivet placement's wrong. That should be back. Back. So these are definitely not. He doesn't even. I can't hear what he's saying. So, I mean, for a pair, I would refer to these as pickup tongs, um, more than hammer eye tongs. But and for those that don't know, um, oh lordy no, yeah, okay, that part's wrong too. Um, we'll just we don't need to go any further with that. For those that don't know, the hammer eye tong, the Brian Brazil hammer eye tong, my understanding of this is they are modified versions of pickup tongs that Brian saw and used in Alfred Haberman's shop way back in the day, and then he modified them. I think he adjusted the jaws a little bit, and then he moved the rivet placement, and thus the Brian Brazil hammer eye tong was born. I think there's a little more that goes into it than that, but that's essentially the thing. Um, while that's doing, I'll let this play because I think this is good too. But the getting the hammer eye tong right, I think, is something that I haven't seen any video really kind of go over. So that's a super long-winded way I went down a rabbit hole. But that's a super long-winded way of saying I'd love to have Ed come out and do that. And if I can't do that, I'll do it myself, or I try to get Jonathan to do it. Um, I don't. It's not that I want to. I wouldn't want to cut into anybody's business in terms of being able to make and sell those. But at the same time, Brian is big on sharing information and getting stuff out there. And I think that is one of those things. I think even with the information out there, I think people will make better hammer eye tongs. I don't think very many of those people are ever going to come close to what Jonathan can produce or what Ed or Brian themselves can produce, or in the time frame that they can do it in. Um, This is filmed at John Perilou's shop down in Louisiana. Um, I don't know. Okay. Uh, yeah, this was back in 2021. So this was right after I left for we did a tire hammer class or workshop, tire hammer workshop, and I guess Brian and Ed had stayed behind, and then Brian had done like a class or something afterwards. Um, I don't see too many more. Don't let Pat Quinn see this. Well, I don't know that Pat Quinn's forged hammer eye tongs either. I've never seen them. Pat makes some really nice tongs though. Maybe he doesn't want Pat to see him doing this because Pat would be doing this on the power hammer. Oof, that anvil. I don't think there's a straight edge on that thing. I get you use what you got, and what you can get, but man, I don't know, man. I couldn't, I couldn't bring myself to deal with this for any amount of time. What in the hell? His rivet is, it looks like the rivet is bigger in dimension oh my lord. Okay, remember what I said about your rivet being able to go, oh, okay, there's a lot of problems going on here. So remember what I said about your rivet being able to pass through and then these sitting flush with each other, sitting flat on top of each other. When they don't and you go to set up, this is what can happen. So he's compounded his problem because of how thin his boss is. The boss on your tong should always be the thickest part of the, in most cases, should always be the thickest part of the tongs. In special cases, your jaws could be a little bit bigger, but for the most part, your boss for your tongs needs to be the strongest part of your tongs. Look how thin these are. That is insanity. Um, it looks like he used 3/8 for the whole thing, which is craziness. I mean, to be honest, it looks like his rivet's got more diameter to it than the material he's using. Whew. Oh, did he split it? Looks like he split it. No, but he's gonna. Give him time. It'll happen. Look how thin that is. And it's not, that should be, your boss should be a bar. There should be no taper in your boss. Look at that. You can see it's tapered from here down. It's thick here and thin there. He's a young guy, so I'm gonna cut him some slack. This is way better. Whatever he's it's still not good, but it's way better. He learned from his mistake, moved and redid it, moved on. But see the problem here? That's not seated properly. He's gonna be fighting that. Um, don't recommend this either on hammer eye tongs, provided you're using the correct material. But I'm gonna assume he's just using mild. Um, there's still a lot wrong here, but hey, kudos to him. He at least addressed the problem and moved on. Um, I was kind of curious, like how he knows Pat, but I'm gonna guess he just knows him through Instagram or something. Um, so your secret's safe with us. That is interesting. That's not a hammer. I wouldn't call that a hammer eye punch, but what do I know? Anyways, I've been rambling about tongs for way too long now. Um, let me escape all of this nonsense. Go back to my YouTube channel here, where I ramble and ramble and ramble. Swing out time. What were we working on here? Let's see. Are we doing anything? Doing anything? Doesn't look like we're doing anything. Doing anything? Doing. Oh, 20 minutes in, we're doing something. I cut something off. Professional forging here in shorts. So, anyways, I'm gonna pause that. We don't need to go into that too much. So yeah, tongs. Once we get through tong video, a tong video, at some point, yeah, hammer eye tongs would be a cool video to do. But I want to do, if I do it, I want to do it right. So I'm gonna have to get into the swing of things again. I've not made a pair of hammer eye tongs in like 4 years, and it's been a while. So put my money where my mouth is, I suppose, and I will do that at some point. Um, what did I have? Oh, my window died. That's interesting. Um, but yeah, I wanna do that. I want to um, edited videos. Back to edited videos. I want to do tools to make tools. I think I already said that. Um, and then so a drift, a hammer eye punch, set hammer, fullers, bottom tools, hot cuts, kind of go through the whole echelon of tools to make tools, then do a hammer video. And I don't necessarily know that that makes a lot of sense, but I'm still going to do it because there's plenty of videos out there on how to make a hammer, and there's plenty of videos out there um, of how to forge a hammer right. There, look up Andrew Larson. There's one he did at Coal Iron Works. There's two or three maybe. I know of two for sure. There's one where I'm striking for Andrew at the Andy Davis Hammer In, and then he does another one using the KA75 power hammer. Not really a power hammer, but a power hammer. Um, at the KA75, he makes one and kind of goes through it in steps. And I don't know if the whole thing is on YouTube, but it's available for free on the the Coal School of Iron website. If you go there, it's a free class, and it's broken up into sections, so you can go back and rewatch things, and it's a little easier to to digest. But he does it all under a KA75. You too can do that if you have a striker. It's the same, essentially the same techniques. You just need the tools to do it. Um, it's not necessarily something that you would do by yourself. Um, not that you can't. It's just you're making the jump from one size of hammer to another is pretty big. So going from like let's say inch and a half, going from an inch and a half billet up to a 2-inch billet, trying to forge a 2-inch billet by hand is way more difficult than a 1.5-inch billet doing it by hand. Um, with a striker, if you're doing it correctly, there's not that much difference. But doing it by hand with a hand hammer, um, yeah, it becomes a lot more work. So we'll eventually do that video at some point. But I want to also start going into some other things as well. But I think the idea I have moving into it, I think will be better. So, and the other thing I wanted to bring up, however late this is now, um, 2 hours in of me rambling about nonsense. Weather permitting, my goal is to do a forging stream this Wednesday, and I will have all the blah blah blahs and announce that when it's closer to that. But my goal is to go out and actually stream some forging this week, because it's been a minute. I don't remember the last time I've done it. It was a while ago. Let's see, live, actual forging live. Nope, nope. Nope. Last time was, when was this? 4 months ago. September, back in September. And let's see, oh, well, 30 minutes in, I'm at least forging. Was this the flour? Looks like a leaf. What's different about that, dummy? Nothing different about a leaf, doofus. I just want to point out, I don't pull this off very often, but that's a pretty damn good hole. That's 1/2 inch by 1/4. That's a damn good hole. So the tricky part to doing 1/2 inch is, if you're not dead on, boy does it ever show. So hey, I'm gonna pat myself on the back real quick. I don't always nail that one, but when I do, I'm gonna let y'all know about it. Yeah. So here it looks like a flower, but this isn't what I thought it was. And I'm pretty sure I butchered this flower. See, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, so September, I wanna get back out there and do a stream of forging on a stream. What happened to my windows? There they are. But anyways, with that, I'm going to call it a night because I do have to do work stuff tomorrow. And I will catch you guys hopefully on Wednesday. And if not, I'll see you when I see you. Until then, take it easy. And I will leave you with this silly little gem.
My eyes are closed, my mind is playing another penitentiary.